The planet Agrion 4 is a vast agricultural world where endless fields stretch out under pale blue skies, and was once the main source of food and resources for the Galactic Empire. Golden fields of barley, orchards, and sparkling rivers have made Agrion 4 the food basket of the galaxy for centuries. But all that changed when the Empire deployed harvesters, giant machines, hundreds of meters tall, with mechanical arms that can dig deep into the ground, sucking up everything from soil to groundwater, leaving behind barren, dead lands. They not only harvest crops, but also mine rare minerals, turning the planet into a vast resource mine for the Empire's wars and ambitions. The people of Agrion 4, once proud farmers, are now forced into slavery on their own land. They were forced to work under the watchful eyes of Imperial guards, cultivating crops to feed the machines and fleets above. Every seed, every drop of water was tightly controlled. But in the silence of the dead fields, one farmer was silently sowing the seeds of destruction. Vorin did not speak much. In fact, he hardly spoke at all. In his 50s, he was a lean but sturdy man, with tanned skin lined by long days in the sun, and deep gray eyes that looked down at the ground, as if searching for something lost. Vorin had once been the best farmer in the eastern plains of Agrion 4, renowned for his ability to produce high-yield crops without the aid of modern technology. But when the harvesters arrived, they destroyed his fields, drained the river his family depended on, and killed his wife in an accident as she tried to stop the machines from entering their land. From then on, Vorin became mute. No one knew whether he chose not to speak or had lost the ability to speak after the shock. He worked in the Imperial Farm Corps, tilling the land, sowing, harvesting, all in absolute silence. The others on his team called him the Mute, a nickname that was both pity and respect. But behind the silence, Vorin did not give up. He watched the harvesters, the way they moved, the way they sucked nutrients from the soil, the way they depended on the fields to keep them going. And he began to have an idea. One night, while digging deep into the soil to check the moisture, Vorin found something strange, a small, shiny black seed, different from the usual barley the Empire supplied. He recognized it immediately, the seed of Zarathus, a poisonous plant long extinct on Agrion 4. The plant had been banned because its roots exuded a poison that could corrode metal and deplete the soil in weeks. Vorin picked up the seed, tucked it into his pocket, and in his mind, a plan began to form. Vorin did not act immediately. He knew that if he was discovered, the Empire would kill him without trial. Instead, he waited patiently, observing the harvester. The giant machine, called Harvester 7, worked constantly, moving from field to field, sucking everything down long pipes and processing it in the central reactor. But Vorin realized a weakness. The reactor needed raw materials from the ground. If the materials were contaminated, the machine would self-destruct from the inside. He began to experiment in secret. Under the soil of the assigned area, Vorin planted a few Zarathus seeds among the barley, concealing them by sowing more conventional seeds on top. The Zarathus plants grew slowly, their roots spreading underground, secreting toxins that were invisible to the naked eye. Vorin watched as the soil around the plants turned gray over the weeks, and the small pieces of metal left in the fields began to corrode. He knew he had found a weapon. But Vorin couldn't do it alone. He needed someone to help spread the plan without raising suspicion. He chose Sira, a young girl in the farm crew who had been his apprentice before the Empire arrived. Sira had fiery red hair and sharp eyes, and had always been resentful of Imperial control, but was wise enough to hide it. One day, as they plowed the land, Vorin quietly handed her a Zarathus seed, pointed to the ground, and looked at her with a meaningful look. Sira understood. "You want to destroy them from within," she whispered. Vorin nodded, his eyes shining for the first time in years. They planned in silence, communicating through gestures and glances. Syra recruited 2 others, Kel, a strong but quiet young man, and Mara, an older woman who had been a botanist before being forced into farming. The group agreed that they would sow Zarathus seeds across the eastern fields, where Harvester 7 would arrive within a month. Over the next 3 weeks, Vorin's team worked with extreme care. They sowed the Zarathus seeds at night, when the guards were tired and patrol boats were less active. Syra used her skills to spread the seeds evenly across the field, while Kel dug small holes to hide the saplings from Imperial scanners. Mara, with her knowledge of botany, made sure the Zarathus grew at the right pace, not too fast to give away the plan, but strong enough to spread the poison. Vorin oversaw it all, his calloused hands carefully pressing each seed into the ground. He said nothing, but each time he sowed, he thought of his wife, of the once green field now dead. He imagined the poison seeping from the roots into the soil, spreading through Harvester 7's pipes, corroding the reactor from within. This was his revenge, not loud, not violent, but silent and unstoppable. The night before Harvester 7 arrived in the eastern fields, the group gathered in an old hut near the edge of the field. There was no light, only the sound of the wind blowing through the Zarathus growing underground. Syra whispered, "If it succeeds, the machine stops. If it fails, we die." Kel nodded, gripping his hoe as if ready to fight. Mara smiled weakly. There is nothing left to lose on this land anyway. Vorin just looked at them, his gray eyes shining with unspoken determination. The day Harvester 7 arrived, the skies of Agrion 4 shook with the roar of a giant engine. The machine, as tall as a mountain, with its mechanical arms outstretched, began sucking soil and plants through its pipes. The guards watched from a distance, confident that everything was under control. Vorin and his team blended in with the farmers, their heads bowed as usual, but their eyes never leaving the machine. At first, everything went smoothly. Harvester 7 roared, sucking up soil and plants, processing them in the reactor. But then, a strange screech sounded from inside the machine. The pipes began to shake, and black smoke poured from the reactor. An officer shouted over the radio, "Check it out! Something's wrong!" But it was too late. The poison from the Zarathus plant, sucked up with the soil, had seeped into the system. The metal inside the reactor corroded rapidly. The circuits shorted out, and a huge explosion ripped through the machine. Harvester 7 shuddered, then collapsed into the field in a cloud of dust and fire. The guards panicked. Patrol boats rushed in, but there was no way to save it. The giant machine, the symbol of Imperial control, was now a charred pile of scrap metal in the middle of a field of death. Vorin stood there, silent as ever, looking at the wreckage. Syra took his hand, whispering, "We did it." But he did not answer. He turned away, bent down to the ground, and planted another Zarathus seed, not to destroy it, but to remind the Empire that this land would never belong to it. News of the 7th Harvester's fall spread quickly through Agrion 4, and then to other farming worlds. The Empire sent out an investigation, but they found no real cause, only poisoned soil and tiny Zarathus plants growing from the ashes. Vorin and his group were not immediately discovered, but they knew the Empire would retaliate. It didn't matter, though. The seeds of destruction had been planted, not just in the soil, but in the hearts of other farmers. From the eastern fields, an underground movement began. Farmers across Agrion 4 quietly searched for Zarathus seeds, planting them in the ground, waiting for the day when the other Imperial reapers would fall. Vorin, who was silent, never spoke of his victory. But each seed he planted was a declaration of war, a promise that the Empire would pay with the land it had taken.